She unalived her foster daughter for eating too slow. Ariel Robinson was the foster mother of 3-year-old Victoria Smith. 3-year-old Victoria had thrown up on her dress on the way to church. Instead of just realizing that toddlers throw up sometimes, Ariel claimed that Victoria threw up on purpose. Ariel took off all of Victoria's clothes and then forced Victoria to stand outside the church in only her underwear, in the cold. Ariel told Victoria, "Oh, you're cold? Girls that make themselves throw up deserve to be cold." The next day, Ariel lost her temper because Victoria was not eating her pancakes fast enough. Ariel's husband, Austin Robinson, could hear Ariel beating Victoria with a belt and a heavy paddle from outside the house. When Austin walked back inside the house, he saw Ariel standing over Victoria with a belt, yelling, "You don't get to tell me when you're done." During the beating, Victoria lost consciousness and went limp. So Ariel called emergency services and made up a bunch of excuses as to why Victoria was unresponsive. 3-year-old Victoria passed away. The beating was so severe that Victoria bled out internally from the waist down. Austin received 20 years in prison for aiding and abetting, and Ariel received life in prison. What I don't understand is that you can choose to foster a child. So did Ariel just foster Victoria to abuse Victoria? Like, I genuinely do not understand. But what do you guys think about this case?
She strangled, stabbed, and slit a 9-year-old's throat just to know what murder felt like. Elizabeth Olton was a sweet 9-year-old girl from the quiet town of St. Martin's, Missouri. In her neighborhood, kids played outside almost every afternoon, and one of Elizabeth's closest playmates was 6-year-old Emma Bustamante. What nobody realized was that Emma's older sister had been planning a murder for days. Alyssa Bustamante was only 15 years old, but her life had already been unstable for years. Her mother struggled with substance abuse, her father was in prison, and she and her siblings were eventually raised by their grandparents. On top of that, Alyssa battled severe depression and had a history of self-harm. She was even receiving psychiatric treatment, but investigators will later say none of that explained what they found next. Because Alyssa wasn't just struggling, she was obsessed. In her private journal, she wrote about wanting to know what it felt like to kill someone. Not a specific person, not revenge, just the experience itself. And just days before the murder, she went into the woods behind her home and dug 2 shallow graves, just waiting for the perfect opportunity. Then, on October 21st, 2009, she decided it was finally time. Alyssa had her sister Emma go over to Elizabeth's house and ask her if she wanted to come outside and play. Elizabeth was excited. She asked her mom for permission and left home expecting nothing more than a playdate, but she never made it back. As the 3 girls walked together, Alyssa eventually separated Elizabeth from Emma by telling her she had a surprise waiting in the woods, something just for her. Once they were alone, everything changed. Alyssa attacked. She strangled Elizabeth, slit her throat, stabbed her multiple times, and buried her in one of the shallow graves she'd already prepared. Then she walked away and went back home like nothing happened. And for hours, nobody knew, until Elizabeth didn't come home. When 6 p.m. passed and she still hadn't walked through that door, her mother knew immediately that something was wrong and reported her missing. Detectives quickly learned that Elizabeth had been last seen with the Bustamante sisters. That detail changed everything. When they brought Alyssa in for questioning, her story started to fall apart almost immediately, and eventually, she confessed. She led them straight to the shallow grave in the woods where Elizabeth's body had been hidden. And then came something even more disturbing. Investigators found Alyssa's journal. Inside, she described the murder as amazing and pretty enjoyable, before casually ending the entry by saying she had to go to church. That detail alone was deeply unsettling and showed just how twisted Alyssa truly was. In 2012, Alyssa Bustamante pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole, plus a consecutive 30-year sentence. Her next chance of parole is in 2029, which will hopefully be denied. What do you guys think about this case? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.
The way this boy's disappearance was solved is unlike anything I've ever heard of. You're not already familiar with Daniel Morecambe's case, everything you need to know so far is in part 1. When we left off in part 1, investigators already had this sick, vile monster, Brett Peter Cohen, on their radar for the disappearance of Daniel. He had a history of violence towards children, didn't really have an alibi, and matched the witness description of the man last seen with Daniel. All investigators needed was some evidence. So they started this complex undercover investigation against Brett, where for months they had him convinced that he was a part of this hardcore gang. They had him doing fake substance dealings, they had him getting weapons off what he thought was the black market, even collecting fake debts for this fake gang. So after months of this, they tell Brett that he's ready to meet the gang's leader, the man at the top. But Brett was really meeting a highly skilled interrogator. And to prove himself to the head of the gang, Brett actually confessed to abducting and unaliving 13-year-old Daniel Morecambe while hidden cameras filmed everything. Undercover officers actually got Brett to take them to where he hid Daniel's body, and they said it was to help him cover up any evidence that he might have left. But in actuality, arresting officers were hidden nearby and arrested Brett right then and there. And luckily, he was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison, finally giving Daniel's family some closure after 10 years of waiting for justice. And since this case is so important to so much of Australia, I'm actually very grateful to say that I actually got to speak with some of my Australian viewers while creating this video. And I was told just how much this case affected all of Australia and how his family really never stopped searching for justice. And now how in Australia they have Day for Daniel, where across all of Australia people wear red to spread awareness and now remembrance for Daniel, which I think is just beautiful. Just once more at the end of this video, I want to highlight Daniel's family for never giving up hope for their son that they would find justice for him, and the investigators on this case. I mean, I feel so often that we see investigators really drop the ball, but not in this case. They never stopped looking for justice for Daniel. In the comments, let me know what case you'd want to see me cover next, and I'll see you tomorrow for the next video.
She recorded herself getting freaky with the family dog before ending her kid's life. In 2019, Lisa Snyder had called 911 to tell dispatch that her children had ended their lives. When paramedics arrived to the home, they went down to the basement, and that's when they found the two children hanging from a beam, and there was two bar-style chairs that were knocked over. The kids were in cardiac arrest, but they were revived and sent to a nearby hospital, but ended up passing away. But what authorities didn't know was that Lisa had a story planned. She told police that 8-year-old Connor had been bullied at school and he couldn't take it anymore and he just wanted to end his life. But before he was going to do that, he wanted to make sure that his 4-year-old sister left as well, so they made a pact and did it together. As police were investigating, an occupational therapist stated that Connor had a disability which would make him incapable of doing something like this. Investigators found no evidence to support Lisa's claims that Connor was being bullied at school. Teachers and faculty members stated that he was very happy and friendly with all his classmates. As investigators were looking through Lisa's phone, they saw a bunch of Google searches with her asking how to unalive someone and how to not get caught. But when they were looking through her photos, they also saw her recording herself getting freaky with the family dog. A friend told police that Lisa had told them that she was depressed and no longer cared about her children. In 2019, Lisa was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and was held without bond for 5 years until her trial started. In September of 2024, trial started, and Lisa's oldest son claimed that Owen was never being bullied and that his mom was a monster and he did not claim her as his mom anymore, and that his siblings would never be able to enjoy life. The judge handed Lisa 2 life sentences and an extra 8.5 to 17 years.
A 16-year-old took one last selfie, then stepped in front of an oncoming train. Before the internet knew her as Rena Palenkova, she was Renata Kambalania, a 16-year-old girl from Ussurous, Russia. She loved rock music, played the drums, and like many other teenagers, she spent time sharing pieces of her life online. But behind those posts, she was fighting a battle that most people couldn't see. She'd been struggling with severe depression for quite some time, and according to the people who knew her, things at home weren't easy either. Then, just a few days before her death, she went through a painful breakup with her boyfriend. For someone who was already carrying so much, that heartbreak seemed to be the final blow. On November 22nd, 2015, Renata posted what will become her last photo. It was a selfie taken near a set of railroad tracks with the caption, "Naya bye." The next day, she went back. Investigators say Renata lay down on the train tracks as a train approached, but in those final moments, she changed her mind and tried to get up, but there wasn't enough time. The train couldn't stop before it reached her, and at just 16 years old, Renata lost her life. That should have been where her story ended. Instead, it became the beginning of one of the internet's darkest myths. Her final selfie spread across forums and social media at an unbelievable speed. Strangers recreated the photo, drew fan art, and treated her death like some kind of dark aesthetic instead of a heartbreaking loss. Then the rumors started. People claimed Renata had been a part of the infamous Blue Whale Challenge, a supposed online game where teenagers were manipulated into taking their own lives. But none of that was true. In fact, investigators found no evidence that Renata ever participated in the challenge. Her death happened first. The myth came afterwards when online groups took a real girl's death and twisted it into a story that spread faster than the truth ever could. And that's what makes this case so devastating. People remember the name Rena Palenkova, they remember the selfie, and they remember the rumors. But they rarely remember Renata Kambalania, the 16-year-old girl who was hurting long before the internet knew her name. Today's case was heavy, and as of lately I've been talking about a lot of mental health, and I know that it can be triggering, so I'm just gonna normalize giving y'all hugs. Bring it in. What do you guys think about this case? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.
Her parents took her life after she refused to marry her cousin. 18-year-old Saman Abbas lived with her parents in northern Italy but were originally from Pakistan. She chose not to wear a head covering in public and would also post photos of her kissing her boyfriend in public, and this would make her parents very upset. In 2020, Saman's parents wanted her to travel to Pakistan for an arranged marriage with her cousin, but she refused. To get away from her parents, she lived for several months under the protection of social services but was tricked into going back after she received messages from them. Once Saman returned home, she mysteriously disappeared. On April 29th of 2021, CCTV footage captures 3 members of the family walking with spades, a crowbar, and a blue bag. The following day, separate footage shows Saman leaving the house with her parents, and she was never seen again. Her body was eventually recovered near a farmhouse that wasn't too far away from her parents' home. An autopsy revealed she had suffered a broken neck bone from being strangled. Once Saman's family had unalived her, they immediately left Italy and went to Pakistan so they wouldn't be caught. Her uncle, who was also involved, was detained in Paris in 2021. Father was arrested in 2022, and at the time her mother was on the run. In court, Saman's father claimed that he was innocent and that him and his wife only followed her that night because it was late and they were unhappy and they just wanted to see where she was going. The court convicted both parents and they were sentenced to life in prison.
He SA'd a 3-year-old girl and then stuffed her body inside a storage bin. Devin O'Brien called the police to tell them that his girlfriend's dog and 3-year-old daughter, Charlotte, were taken because he could not find them.
My girlfriend's daughter and dog have been taken. I took a 30-minute nap and I just woke up and they're nowhere. I have searched our entire home.
When was the last time you seen her?
Dude, I don't know how long I was asleep, to be honest with you. I know you guys are doing the job. I don't think she's doing 50 feet.
Okay.
I would have found her and you guys would have found her.
When police officers arrived at the scene, they found 3-year-old Charlotte's body inside a shed, stuffed in a storage bin.
Up top?
Yes! You need to go!
Alright, Okay.
Tell us that, Chuck.
No, leave it.
Right.
Get out. Well, we gotta check. Okay.
We gotta check her.
Your eye socket, dude.
Ready? Yep. Oh yeah, man, I can see hair.
Devin had severely SA'd Charlotte and then aggressively beat her, leaving trauma injuries all over her body. Devin then strangled Charlotte, which unalived her. When Charlotte's body was found, Devin pretended to act surprised and shocked, as if he wasn't the one who unalived her.
What? No, bro. Are you, dude? Please do not tell me she's dead. So what? Where was she? Was she okay?
Devin received life in prison without the possibility of parole, which is exactly what he deserves. But what do you guys think about this case?
I would never hurt that girl, dude. I love that.
They've acknowledged somebody doing it.
I love that kid, man.
Hold on.
I swear to God, I love that child, man. I want to be your dad, dude.
It's not like I made a deal with the devil. It's like I made a deal with myself. that I have like a devil in me. It's like that, you know, every man has a bad man within him. People think I'm a bad person. I'm not.
He said he was going to a friend's house, but then he never returned. What happened to Bobby Smith? Robert William Smith, who went by Bobby, was 16 years old and living in East Chicago, Indiana, with his mother and siblings at the time of his disappearance. He had several family members who lived close by and he was very close to. And according to family members, they say that he had a challenging relationship with his mother, which, being a teenager, that is certainly not unheard of. On Wednesday, October 25th, 2000, Bobby left and told his mother that he was going over to a friend's house. And when he didn't return, she just thought that maybe he was upset about something or being rebellious, so she didn't really worry about it at first. But then the following day, he didn't go to school. His mother then thought, well, he'll certainly be home by the weekend. But then the weekend came and went. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, and months turned into years. Bobby never came home, and there's really such little reporting on this case that I'm honestly not even sure when he was reported missing. What makes this case frustrating is, according to family members who went on the Vanished podcast, when they eventually went to talk to police about the case, they said they had no record of Bobby's case. He's now listed as an endangered missing person, but we have no idea what happened after he left that house that day, and it seems like there was likely no investigation done in the early stages, the most important stages. Bobby remains missing, and his family has spent more than 2 decades trying to figure out what happened to him. Bobby would be 42 years old today. At the time of his disappearance, he was 5'4" and weighed about 115 pounds with brown hair and brown eyes. His left ear was pierced and he had a scar on his right eyebrow as well as a scar on his left arm from previous stitches. If you or anybody you know has any information regarding the disappearance of Bobby Smith, you can contact the East Chicago Police Department. Thank you for listening to Bobby's story. Be sure to follow for more true crime, and if you have any case recommendations, feel free to comment, directly message me, or fill out the Suggest a Case form in my link tree in my bio.
When his car was found in the middle of the night, his engine was still running and his headlights were on, and just a few meters away were all of his clothes. It was the 13th of December 2020 in Texas. Jason Landry was a 21-year-old student at Sam Houston State University. He was a really nice, happy young guy. He was always up for a laugh, not taking life too seriously. He was actually really excited because he was heading home to spend the Christmas holidays with his family and his old friends. But certain friends noticed he'd started acting kind of weird recently. He'd been smoking W, and one friend said that he had started chatting more about like aliens and conspiracies and things like that, but the friend didn't really know whether this was kind of in a serious way or whether this was just a high person chatting. On the evening in question, he did get in his car and he started heading back home. Now, this should have taken him roughly 2.5 hours. He'd popped his destination into the Waze app so that he could navigate back home. With him in the car, he had a bag of toiletries he had packed, like things he would need for his stay, including a PlayStation, laptop, and his 2 pet fish. Jason's phone documented the route that he took, and he was kind of in contact with people during his journey. He was making some calls. He was on FaceTime to his ex-girlfriend, and he was sending her several Snapchats. All seemed fine, and he seemed in good spirits. But when he reached Lulling at 11:24 p.m, he suddenly stopped using the Waze app. He then went the total opposite direction to the direction he should have been heading in. At 11:28 p.m, he sent his ex a chilled-looking selfie of him, and nobody would ever hear from him again. In the early hours of the morning, Jason's car was found abandoned with clear signs of a single car crash. The keys were still in the ignition and the lights were still on. And bizarrely, just meters away from the vehicle were a pile of Jason's clothes, even including shoes and underwear. His backpack was also found very close by with, sadly, inside his pet fish who had passed away. Jason's dad heard about the crash. He was horrified and he went over to the scene of the accident, but Jason's car had already just been towed away. No evidence had even been collected from the scene. They just sort of chalked this off as an accident. Jason's dad really was the one who had to push police and kind of be the driving force in this investigation. He was the one that found Jason's phone inside of the towed car. What he found from this phone was so unusual, it really made no sense. Phone records showed that after he sent that Snapchat to his ex, Jason's phone location just stopped. It stopped working. The information just abruptly stopped, and for over an hour the phone was just not picking up any location data. This was despite the phone still being on and still having signal. Now, police did organize a search operation, but despite their best efforts, despite even like tracker dogs being involved, there was no sign of the missing boy. Then, in 2022, 2 years after Jason's disappearance, a man with a striking resemblance to Jason came into the hospital. He had been found unconscious in New York, but just look how similar the two faces look. Sadly though, despite this giving the family some short-lived hope, this actually wasn't Jason. This was just somebody who just happened to be his doppelganger. To this day, we still have no answers as to what happened to Jason that night.
I'm sorry if I seem heated right now, but there is not that many cases that get me as angry as the strange death of Christian Andreacchio. If you're not already familiar with this case, part 1 and part 2 are linked below. So in part 2, I told you how police ruled that Christian had unalived himself after an investigation that only lasted 45 minutes. And that I believe that Christian's friend Dylan and Christian's girlfriend Whitley lured him so they could unalive him and steal his money. Christian's hands did not test positive for GSR, but Dylan's and Whitley's did, and Dylan had no explanation for this. Whitley says that the night before, she was shooting with this guy, Matt. But Matt says that Whitley never even touched a pew-pew weapon, let alone shot one. He also confirms that him and Whitley had slept together the night before, which confirms Christian's idea that his girlfriend was cheating on him while he was away at work. And if you thought that Whitley and Dylan's stories were suspicious, Christian's body made no sense with the story that he had unalived himself. Christian was right-handed, and the wound to his head was on the right side. So tell me how the weapon was found stuffed under his left leg. Christian's body also appeared to have been staged to look slumped over the bathtub and didn't align with bodies that are standing and then unalive themselves. In the wall behind Christian's body was a hole that is consistent with a bullet hole. But the bullet was found in the bathtub that Christian was slumped into, with what appeared to be drywall ledged into it. Also, little to no blood in the bathroom that Christian's body was found in, like someone had tried to clean up the mess, and the little blood that was there had already dried. His body was also in a stage that was more consistent with a body that had been unalived for hours, not only 30 minutes, which is how long Dylan said it had been since he had seen Christian alive. Christian's family, like 10 years later, is still fighting for justice for Christian. They say that the authorities won't even talk to him anymore, and the authorities refuse to reopen this case despite not even doing a proper investigation. To make matters worse, when Christian's family went to Christian's apartment after he passed away, they found more evidence, like a bloody knife in the living room and Christian's bloody shirt that was stuffed behind the toilet in the bathroom that he was found in. The Meridian, Mississippi Police Department want us to believe that Christian shot himself in the head, took off his bloody shirt, put a different shirt on, took the bloody shirt, stuffed it behind the toilet, did something with a knife, put that in the living room, then took the gun, turned it like this, and then stuffed it under his left leg. There is some talk online about Dylan and Whitley having connections to the police department, but I think it's just more likely that the Meridian, Mississippi Police Department judged the scene too quickly and don't want to reopen the case because they don't want to admit that they were wrong. There is still so much information in this case, so I really urge you all to do your own independent research and keep looking into Christian Andreacchio's case. And keep discussing with me in the comments because I'll be reading all of them, and let me know what you think happened in this case. If you want to keep up with me, I have a link tree in my bio that has like my Instagram and also a YouTube channel that I just started if you want to see me cover more longer formed videos.
We were sat talking about people going missing last night when we were having food, and my friend suddenly said, oh my god, where I grew up in the 90s there was this really, really eerie missing persons case. So obviously I was like, oh my god, tell me everything. So this all happened in Coventry in 1991 in December. So it was really like creepy, foggy, cold anyway. And this girl called Nicola Payne was only 18 and she was a brand new mum. I think her baby Owen was only about 7 months at this point. Now, even though Nicola was only young herself, she was an amazing mum. She just took to motherhood like a duck to water. She was so amazing as a new mum. And on the 14th of December that year, she left her boyfriend Jason's house, where I think she was living also at the time with the new baby, to go to her parents' house, which should have been a very, very short walk. I believe it was less than half a mile. It should have only taken her roughly about 6 minutes. She cut through this area called the Black Pad, which sounds creepy to me anyway, but this was basically like a shortcut through so she could get quicker from her boyfriend's house to her parents' house. And this was kind of like back in the day before mobile phones were popular. You tended not to really have a mobile phone, or if you did, it was just like a black Nokia brick. Nicola didn't have any way of like communicating, and she shouldn't really have needed to. She was only walking for about 5 minutes. And the alarm was raised pretty quickly when she just didn't get back to her parents' house, and nobody knew where she was. Now, police were informed, and obviously, like I said, they couldn't trace her phone or anything. They basically had to get helicopters in the air to try and scour the area for any sign of her. A dog walker called Patrick did come forward with a really creepy story. He said he'd heard a woman scream that day. He'd also seen a random man lurking around at that Black Pad area, and he saw a blue car, I think it was called a blue Ford Capri car, nearby too, and he presumed that must have been that man's car. And another call came into police, another call reporting a woman screaming from that rough area. So police officers kind of went door to door just asking if anybody had heard anything, anybody had seen anything. And another local said, I actually saw 2 random men kind of lurking around the Black Pad area, but obviously didn't think anything of it at the time. And I don't know exactly how, maybe from people's descriptions of these men, but 2 men were actually taken in for questioning. These were Nigel Barwell and his brother-in-law Thomas O'Reilly. They were questioned by police, but I feel like police didn't really have much to go on, so they did have to release them at this point. Then a really creepy part of this case is the fact that the family of the missing woman started receiving eerie, like, anonymous phone calls. A voice at the other end was saying that they knew something about Nicola's disappearance, but they couldn't ever work out who was making these phone calls, and police could never identify the person. And honestly, this mystery rumbled on for ages, even years, until finally police had what they thought was a little bit of a breakthrough in this case. They got a tip that Nicola could have been buried in a local person's back garden. I don't know what this tip sort of was relating to, who made it, but regardless, the police took it pretty seriously and they did dig up a full back garden. Sadly though, they had no luck with this. There was no belongings of Nicola's and no sign of Nicola at all. Then in 2007, a 37-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of abducting and murdering Nicola. Now, I don't know what evidence there was, but there must have been something. They don't just arrest people for no reason. However, frustratingly, this man got released. There was no charges brought. Now, then in 2013, new forensic tests did lead to 3 arrests. One arrest was of a woman for perverting the course of justice, and the 2 others were the people from earlier on, Nigel Barwell and Thomas O'Reilly. Now, although the woman ended up being released, Nigel and Thomas were brought to trial. Their main evidence against them was some forensics linking them to a tent on the Black Pad, which also had Nicola's hair found in it, and also some witnesses who said that Nigel and Thomas had actually confessed to the killing to them. But to the frustration of Nicola's family, the pair were found not guilty. Sadly, Nicola's mum, Marilyn, actually passed away in 2023, never knowing what happened to her daughter. We still don't know what truly happened to Nicola Payne.
This boy confessed to murder during a game of Truth or Dare. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Mary Gregory. Mary was an independent 94-year-old woman living alone in a bungalow in Heysham, Lancashire. She was a beloved and devoted mother and grandmother. She was just very kind, caring and nurturing by nature. So when her son Chris introduced her to his stepson Tiernan, it was no surprise that Mary took him under her wing and loved him as if he was one of her own. 17-year-old Tiernan would take advantage of Mary's kindness. He had his own set of keys to her bungalow and he would just show up whenever he wanted, and when he showed up he would eat her out of house and home. He would make loads of mess and wouldn't clean up after himself, and this really annoyed Mary because her bungalow was always spotless. The mess may seem like a minor thing, however Mary suffered with dementia and she could become confused easily, so when her bungalow was kind of upside down it heightened her confusion a little bit. It just made things a bit more difficult for her. This went on for some time and Mary began to dread Tiernan coming over. In the early hours of the 28th of May 2018, 999 received a phone call reporting that a bungalow was engulfed in flames. Firefighters raced to the scene and began to tackle the fire, and this is when they found Mary. She was found underneath a coffee table in her conservatory, which is quite close to her conservatory doors, so she had tried her best to escape the fire but was overcome by smoke inhalation. Mary was rushed to the hospital where for 4 days she fought for her life. However, on the 1st of June 2018, she would sadly be pronounced dead. Mary's death was ruled as an accident, and it was believed that the fire was also the result of a terrible accident. See, Mary was a very heavy smoker, so it was theorised that she had either dropped a lit cigarette and forgot about it and that started the fire, or she had improperly disposed of a cigarette and that's what started the fire. Again, she did suffer with dementia, so it wasn't too outlandish to think this. A couple of weeks later, Tiernan was hanging out with some of his friends when they began to play a game of Truth or Dare. When it was Tiernan's turn, he was dared to reveal his deepest, darkest secret, and this would be the first time he would confess to the murder. He told his friends how he was responsible for the fire, and he almost tried to make it out as if Mary's murder was kind of like a mercy killing. He said that he didn't want her living and suffering with dementia anymore, and that's why he did it. You would think that this would raise alarm bells and red flags, however I don't think Tiernan's friends took him seriously. He was known for being a bit morbid and having a dark sense of humour, so I genuinely don't think that they believed him. Around 1 year after Mary's death, Tiernan would again confess to her murder. However, this time he'd done it to a counsellor who thankfully done the right thing and alerted the police. They decided to reopen Mary's case and have another look into her death, and the evidence that they found made it unbelievable that her death was ever ruled as accidental. So, what really happened on the 28th of May 2018? Tiernan had gone to a garage nearby Mary's bungalow where he bought some tea cakes and a can of Coke. I know that doesn't seem relevant right now, but trust us, it is. He then made his way over to Mary's bungalow where he quietly let himself in. He began to dismantle all of the smoke alarms. He unplugged the phone. Do you remember that I said that Mary was found underneath a coffee table in the conservatory? Well, Tiernan had actually moved this coffee table to the conservatory door in order to barricade it so that Mary couldn't get out. So after barricading the door, Tiernan then creeped to the bedroom where he set one of the curtains on fire and fled. When Mary awoke to her smoke-filled room, her little home engulfed in flames, she was horrified, and in her tired and confused state, she tried her best to escape. She made a beeline for the conservatory doors and tried to climb under the table to get out, but sadly she would not make it. Neighbours would recall being able to hear Mary scream. Inside one of the bins at the scene, there was a can of Coke which had been drunk and the wrappers from some tea cakes. These were the items that Tiernan had bought. He was captured on CCTV buying these, so this confirmed to police that he was at the scene just before the fire started. A search of Tiernan's computer would prove that he had been planning this murder for some time. He had googled things such as under 18 murderer and how long do murderers serve in prison. After Mary's death, he had googled I want to kill again, and I think I might be turning into a serial killer, please help. He also had a list of women's names that he was planning to stalk and to kill, and it was even found that he had drawn out a full diagram of Mary's bungalow and he had like labelled it. So you can see like in this corner here, he says exit through the alleyway, saying that way is quicker. And on this bullet point list, he even had to remind himself to have a good alibi. You can pause to have a proper read through it. The evidence against Tiernan was overwhelming, and honestly I can't believe that they didn't pick up on this sooner. If they had properly investigated the crime scene, the fire, they would have been able to say that all the fire alarms had been dismantled, that the phone was plugged out, that the fire wasn't started from an improperly disposed cigarette, and that it was started from a curtain being on fire. During his trial at Preston Crown Court in November 2021, Tiernan, who was now 21, showed absolutely no remorse. He would go on to be sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure and was given a minimum of 15 years to serve.
It took me days to research this one because I could not stomach the details of this crime. It's sickening. It's hard to imagine that this actually happened. I bet you already know what I'm going to say. Your mental health is priority. Always has been, always will be. This story is about a 5-year-old little girl. If you think that listening to this, and I'm being so serious, I always say this, but I would hate nothing more than to hurt your mental health in any way. So please put yourself first. If you think that listening to this video is going to harm your mental health in any way, please skip it. And I promise I will see you in a different one. Take care of yourselves. I love you guys. In 2014, Harmony Montgomery was born to her mother, Crystal Story, and her father, Adam Montgomery, who was in prison at the time of Harmony's birth. Baby Harmony was born legally blind in one of her eyes, and she wore glasses for it, and she really was the cutest little girl. Within only a couple months of being born, Harmony was placed into foster care after she was removed from her biological mother's care, because it was ruled that her well-being was at risk if she was to stay with her mother. In 2015, Harmony's biological father, Adam, was released from prison, but it wouldn't be until February of 2019 that he would be granted custody of Harmony. At that time, Harmony was around 4.5 years old. Only 5 months into having custody of Harmony, Adam's uncle Kevin noticed that Harmony had a black eye. When he asked Adam about this, Adam admitted that he caused that with his fist. Not only that, but he told Adam that he made Harmony stand in the corner, he forced her to scrub the toilet with her own toothbrush, and he, quote, bashed her around the house. So in July of 2019, Adam's uncle Kevin reported this to authorities, as any sane person would, and that led to a social worker from DCYF to conduct a home visit to see what was going on. That social worker noticed the house was messy, it had a horrible smell to it, but decided that it was still safe for a child to live in. Although that first visit, the social worker allegedly never spoke to Harmony or Adam, he only spoke to Adam's wife, Kayla, who claimed that everything was fine. After that incident, DCYF conducted several home visits, but Harmony Montgomery was never removed from her father and stepmother's care. The last visit happened October 1st of 2019. DCYF did not have any contact with Adam Montgomery again until January of 2020, when DCYF received a call about the Montgomery family. In January of 2020, they ended up speaking to Adam, who informed them that Harmony had been living with her biological mother, Crystal, in Massachusetts since he dropped her off there back in Thanksgiving. Authorities attempted to confirm this information by trying to get a hold of Crystal, but she never returned their call. An entire year passed before anyone would try to look for baby Harmony again. In June of 2021, Harmony's mother, Crystal, showed interest in wanting to see and speak to Harmony again. She posted a video on TikTok with pictures of Harmony and later commented on it and said, quote, "She's not quite missing. Her father has her and he hasn't let me see or talk to her in 2 years for no reason but just to hurt me. She's in Manchester somewhere. I need to find her," end quote. A few months later, DCYF discovered for the first time that Crystal had not seen Harmony since April of 2019, 2.5 years ago. Even though Harmony's father, Adam, claimed that Harmony had been with her, and I don't know why, but somehow months went by without anything being done. Until November of 2021, when Crystal officially reported 7-year-old Harmony Montgomery missing, the police notified DCYF about this, considering that DCYF had been involved in Harmony's life in some way since basically she was a newborn baby and they were familiar with her family. By December 27th of 2021, DCYF went back to the police and let them know that they also could not find Harmony. The next day, they got a hold of Kayla, Harmony's stepmom and Adam's wife, who told them that she was no longer with Adam. She had left him. She said she had no idea where Harmony was. The last she knew was that Adam told her that he dropped her off with Crystal in Thanksgiving of last year. On December 31st of 2021, the police held a press conference where they stated, quote, "Manchester police received a report that Harmony Montgomery hasn't been seen since late 2019. The circumstances surrounding this prolonged absence are concerning and are thoroughly being investigated as we speak," end quote. From day one, Adam and Kayla, although they were now separated, were the main focus of the investigation.
investigation because they were the last known people to be taking care of Harmony, and authorities would soon figure out that 7-year-old Harmony Montgomery was not 7 years old. Harmony Montgomery never made it to 7 because her life had been ripped away from her when she was only 5 years old at the hands of her own father. And soon all of the lies that Adam had been telling, along with the lies that Kayla had been telling for him, would come crashing down. After the search for Harmony began, Adam's uncle Kevin went to the police and spoke to them about the incident that took place back in 2019 when Adam admitted to giving Harmony a black eye. And that was enough for police to be able to arrest Adam on January 4th of 2022 with second-degree assault the 2019 incident, as well as with endangering the welfare of a child and interference with custody by concealing a child. The very next day, January 5th, Kayla was arrested with felony welfare fraud because, come to find out, Kayla had been fraudulently claiming Harmony for food benefits. And in April, Adam received even more charges because authorities found out that he had stolen weapons from a couple back in 2019. Adam was a felon. He was not allowed to have weapons, not allowed to own a weapon or have one in his possession, so he was charged for that with 2 counts of receiving stolen property, 2 counts of being a felon in possession, and 2 counts of armed career criminal. Now again, at the beginning of the investigation, Kayla had been covering for Adam. She had been lying for him, but eventually in May of 2022, she turned on Adam. She agreed to cooperate with law enforcement and became the star witness for the prosecution. In exchange, she would not be charged with anything relating to Harmony's death or the concealment of her body. She would just have to plead guilty to her other charges and would serve 18 months in prison. But when Kayla finally told the truth, it was much darker than anyone could have seen coming. According to Kayla, the day of Harmony's murder was December 7th of 2019. At that point in time, they had been evicted and were living inside of their vehicle. Adam, Kayla, Harmony, and the 2 boys, I think I may have forgotten to mention that Adam and Kayla had 2 sons together. Kayla had lost her job. It's unsure if Adam had a job. December 7th of 2019 was a Saturday. In the early hours of the morning, remember, they were living in their car. Adam woke up and he smelled something. He found that 5-year-old Harmony had gone to the bathroom in her pants and he was furious. Adam was sitting in the driver's seat. 5-year-old Harmony was sitting in the back seat on their right, and instead of helping his daughter, he turned to her in the back seat and struck her with his fist to her in the face 10 to 15 times. Later that morning, Harmony had another accident, and this only made Adam angrier. He reached over the center console behind him to reach Harmony and struck her again with his fist over and over and over again to her tiny little head and face. It's unclear how many times he did this because it was too many to count. When he was done, he looked over at Kayla sitting in the passenger seat and said, quote, "I think I really hurt her this time. I think I did something," end quote. Kayla could hear Harmony in the back seat making gurgling and moaning noises for about 5 minutes and then silence. Adam then drove them to Burger King without ever looking back to see if Harmony was okay, without 1 ounce of concern for his 5-year-old daughter, who he had just attacked. They made it to Burger King, they ate their food, they drove back to the parking lot that they were living in and sat in the car and did substances for about 20 minutes, drove around some more until at one point their car broke down. Adam and Kayla got out of the car, and it was then that they noticed that Harmony was unresponsive. She wasn't moving, she wasn't breathing. Harmony was no longer alive. Her father had struck her in the face so hard with such force that it ended her life, and there she was in the back seat of their car. Kayla later spoke about the last moment that she saw Harmony alive, and she said, quote, "She was in a fetal position, just covering herself, and she was crying," end quote. And after they discovered that she was no longer alive, you may be wondering, what did Adam do? Well, he just grabbed a duffel bag from the trunk and put her body in it. For the next 3 months, from December of 2019 to March of 2020, Adam Montgomery would keep Harmony's body next to him, carrying it around from place to place to place. I really think, if I was to assume, that Adam's thought process was, if there is no body, there is no crime, because it's really hard to convict someone of murder if there is no body. So I believe that he was thinking, if he just made Harmony disappear off the face of the earth, then he could get away with murder. And he thought that it would be a good idea to carry around her body to make sure that nobody found it until he figured out how to dispose of it. Adam, Kayla, and the 2 boys continued living in a vehicle. Adam kept Harmony's body in the duffel bag in the trunk. They eventually moved in with Kayla's mother for a little bit, who lived with her boyfriend in an apartment. At times, Harmony's body was kept underneath the porch or in a red cooler stored in the common corridor of the apartment. It said that Adam liked to keep Harmony outdoors because it was colder and it would slow down the decomposition process, as well as reduce the smell. Then the family moved into a shelter where Adam kept Harmony inside the duffel bag in a ceiling vent above the bunk beds in which they slept. Harmony's body started to decompose and it started to smell, and fluid started seeping out of the duffel bag, and people at the shelter were complaining of a foul smell. So Adam took the entire duffel bag, put it in plastic trash bags to contain the smell and the liquids, and then put that that back in the ceiling. On one occasion, when the families at the shelter continued to complain of the smell, staff went to Adam and Kayla's unit to see what was going on, where the smell was coming from. But Adam had moved the duffel bag into a closet and he had cleaned that area of the ceiling. Adam then got a job as a dishwasher and a cook at a restaurant that was called Portland Pie Company, and he thought that because people at the shelter were still complaining of the smell, he thought that he should store Harmony's remains at his place of work, because there he could keep the duffel bag in the freezer, which would slow down the rate in which the body was decomposing. So while he was at work one day, he asked Kayla to bring the duffel bag into the restaurant. Kayla did. She walked there with a stroller with her 2 sons in it, as well as a large plastic bin. In the bin was the duffel bag. Adam then took the bag with Harmony inside and put it in the restaurant's freezer. He did this so many times, and not one person ever wondered what was in that bag. Around February of 2020, the family got an apartment of their own, and into there they again transferred the duffel bag in the plastic bin. When they noticed that the plastic bin was leaking, Adam took the duffel bag out, put it in yet another trash bag and into their fridge. When it became excessive, Adam removed the body, the remains, from the bag. With Kayla's help, they cut the clothing, took it into the bathroom where Adam would spend hours rinsing off the body and the fluids that were leaking. Then in March of 2020, in the middle of the night, Adam rented a U-Haul and left with the remains. He was gone from around 1 in the morning to 5 in the morning. When he came back, he didn't tell Kayla where he disposed of the remains, but he looked at her and said something along the lines of, "It's done." After Kayla gave this confession to law enforcement, officers and investigators went out to gather evidence that would back up Kayla's claims and could be used in court. They took the cooler from Kayla's mother's apartment, the fridge from their apartment, they tracked down the U-Haul van, and then they visited the shelter. In the ceiling of the shelter, exactly where Kayla said that Adam had placed the duffel bag, they found the area smelled like decomposition. Later, it was confirmed that Harmony's DNA was found inside of that ceiling vent. Adam Montgomery was charged with second-degree murder, and his trial began February 8th of 2024. He was found guilty of second-degree murder. He was also found guilty of second-degree witness tampering, falsifying physical evidence, and abuse of a corpse. He was sentenced to 45 years to life for the murder charge, 4 to 8 years for 3.5 to 7 years for witness tampering, and 3.5 to 7 years for falsifying evidence. He also received a 12-month suspended sentence for abuse of a corpse. His charges are to be served consecutively for a total minimum of 56 years in prison. In court, the judge said, quote, "You treated her in the worst of possible ways in both her life and death." In court as well, Crystal, Harmony's biological mother, said, quote, "She lit up a room when she walked in it. She made a mark wherever she went, and you couldn't stand it. She had a life worth living, unlike your own. It bothered you to your core that she was nothing like you and everything like me," end quote. Harmony also had a biological little brother, 7-year-old Jameson, whose statement was read out in court, and this is heartbreaking. His statement reads, "I love Harmony. I miss her. I hope I get to see her again. My sister had beautiful blue eyes, and we smile alike. I liked having fun with her on the playground. She gave me a broken Elmo toy that was hers. I still have that, but I have the Minnie Mouse pillow and a new Elmo that's not broken. I keep it in my closet for her. I'm really sad she's an angel. It's gonna make me cry. I miss her. She was my best friend. I hope she can see me playing basketball, being silly with my brothers, and I wish I could bring Harmony to my school to meet my friends and my teacher." This case is truly horrific, and that father never deserves to see the light of day again. But that is all I have for today's video. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. I'm never going to be able to forget about it, but thank you guys for listening to Harmony's story. I love you all so, so much. I hope you're having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
A boy is walking home with his pet deer. The deer makes it home, but he doesn't. What happened to Bob Boys? Bob Louis Richard Boys was 9 years old and living in Port Republic, Maryland at the time of his disappearance. His mother is Jane and his father is Richard, and he is one of 5 children. He was known as a shy and sensitive boy, and he had a pet deer named Pete. This is one of the things that really caught my eye when I was looking for different missing persons cases to cover, and the pet deer part really pulled me in here. But he was a good student, and he was very close with his siblings, and he also knew the woods really well around his home. On the morning of December 26, 1968, Bobby and 2 of his brothers decide to go to a neighbor's home that is about a mile away on Wash Hance Road, and they played with the kids there. They talked about Christmas and the different gifts they got and just kind of hung out. But lunchtime will come around, and the 2 brothers want to leave and go home to eat. Bobby is not ready to leave at this point, so they leave. About an hour later, he decides it's time to go, so him and the pet deer Pete start walking home. A neighbor actually saw them walking. Probably the pet deer caught her eye, but she watched them walk down Wash Hants Road until they were out of her line of sight. But then Pete would make it home and Bobby wouldn't. They looked for him everywhere and couldn't find him, so at 7:30 that night, they would call police, and hundreds of volunteers came to help look for him. They searched the area, covered miles of woods, and even lakes and ponds were dug. But Bobby was never found, not even a trace of him. So while investigating, authorities start to dig into the parents a little bit, and there are things that start to raise questions. So they talked to the school teacher, who said that Bobby is a great kid, but he always comes to school dirty, like to the point where every morning she has to tell him to go get washed up. The parents never ask how he's doing in school either. And they find out the parents have tempers and a bit of a drinking problem. So the parents take polygraph tests and mom passes, but the dad ends up showing deception when they ask if he knows what happened to Bobby or where Bobby is. Now, a polygraph is obviously unreliable, so you can take that with what you will, but these things were just raising questions. On top of that, for Christmas, Bobby got a watch. And I know Christmas was just the day before he went missing, but he put that watch on and he was not taking it off. 2 days after he went missing, though, he gave the watch to somebody else and said, "You better hold on to this." In July of 1970, Jane would actually pack up the kids and move them to San Diego with other family members. What happened is 2 weeks prior, she had just had a baby and was in the hospital. Now, when she gets home, she's talking to one of the other kids, Joy, and just kind of asking them, like, how are things going when I was gone? And Joy had a disturbing story. Joy would say that some young family members were over and Richard was taking inappropriate photos of them on a mattress. He was a photographer and he had like the black room and everything that he had in a shed. So thank God Jane got the kids and got out of there. And the only time they heard from Richard was when he called Jane to say that he wanted her to bring the boys back, but she could keep the girls. She said hell no to that. The Vanished podcast actually has like an hour and a half long episode that dives in deep and talks a lot about Richard. Joy is on there, a brother is on there, and they really get into it. Unfortunately, we can't talk about all the things they talk about because one, it would take longer than 10 minutes, and two, TikTok will definitely not let me say some of the horrific stories. They're that bad. Just know Richard is a sick man, and this was likely not the first time that he was taking pictures of children inappropriately. Joy believes that her father has something to do with her brother's disappearance, and the detective who took over the case in 2021 has the same suspicion. Richard's alibi at the time was that he was at work at the time Bobby disappeared. However, it doesn't sound like this was fully checked out, and on top of that, a witness would say that they saw Richard behind a church that day when he was supposed to be at work. Unfortunately, Richard died in 1996 without ever admitting to anything. Jane would also pass away in 2019 without ever knowing what actually happened to Bobby. As of July 2026, Bobby remains missing and his family continues to fight for answers. If you or anybody you know has any information regarding the disappearance of Bobby, you can contact the Maryland State Police. Thank you for listening to Bobby's story. Be sure to follow for more true crime, and if you have any case recommendations, feel free to comment, directly message me, or fill out the suggested case form in my link tree in my bio.
This is the story of 3 POS. On December 29th, 2025, a 911 call came in around 10:30 a.m. from 50-year-old Emily Kelly. She had told the dispatcher that 7-year-old Jordan Duncan had unexpectedly went into cardiac arrest. She said that she was actively performing CPR, but nothing was happening. When the police arrived, they found Jordan's body laying outside of the bathroom, and they noticed that she was already blue and her body was badly bruised. She was rushed to NYU Hospital and pronounced dead about an hour after the 911 call. But it's how she died that will shock you. Jordan was born in Long Island in 2018 to her mother, Portia Duncan. Now, Portia suffered from drug addiction, and she would have to take random drug tests. And in late 2019, when Jordan was just a little over 1 year old, Her mother failed that drug test and got Jordan taken away from her. Her father was in prison, so in 2020, Jordan was placed in a foster guardianship with Kim Jackson, who is the ex-wife of her father. Now, during these 5 years that she was with Kim, CPS had gotten 7 complaints about the living condition. 5 of those complaints were dismissed, but the 2 that upheld were because Kim was allowing unauthorized contact with forbidding relatives of Jordan. So in November of 2024, it was still going on. So they took Jordan away from Kim. That's where Emily comes in. Emily is the fiance of Jordan's incarcerated father, and he had instructed her to go try to get custody of Jordan. And her acting like the devoted stepmother, she did that. In December of 2024, Jordan was placed in Emily's home for a trial run, just trying to see if the dynamic would work. And by that January, Jordan was getting physically abused. In Emily's household, it was her 75-year-old mother, Barbara, and her 24-year-old daughter, Alyssa. And from January to April of 2025, their daily routine would be to check Jordan's face in the morning. And if she had too many bruises or the bruises were too bad, she was forced to stay home. Now, if the bruises were passable, they would just put makeup on her face and send her on her way. But if she was forced to stay home, she was locked in a bathroom. This resulted in Jordan missing over 40 days of school. And Kelly would have an excuse each time. She would say that it was a sudden death in the family or Jordan had a medical emergency. She had even said Jordan was on an extended family vacation at Walt Disney. In April, when the trial period was over, Jordan's mother was trying to stop Emily from getting full custody of Jordan. She was filing all type of complaints. She was telling them that Emily is not even the person y'all think she is. But regardless of what she said, they granted Emily full custody anyway. When school was out, the abuse intensified. Emily and her daughter would tie Jordan by her hands and her feet and force her to sit in the bathroom for hours on end. In June of 2025, Emily had recorded Jordan while she was crying, she was hyperventilating, and she stuffed a towel with human feces in her mouth. You can hear Emily laughing and mimicking Jordan. She had even called her a disgusting child. As school was getting close to start back up, Alyssa texted Emily and said, "It looks like Jordan has been beat the entire summer." And Emily replied, "It will be healed up by the time school starts." And Emily also said that if you're going to hit her in her body. So that's not another thing we have to hide. On December 27th, 2025, Jordan was struck 9 times with an unidentified sharp weapon. The deep lacerations were across her lower back and her buttocks. One cut sliced completely through her pelvic cavity, puncturing her colon. Fecal matter and toxic bacteria immediately started leaking, causing her to have an internal infection. The next day, these 3 are saying that the infection is taking over Jordan's body. And instead of calling for help, Emily decides to pull out her phone and record. Now, in this video, Jordan is bound in the bathtub. She's moaning because she's in pain and her eyes are swollen shut because she's been beaten. Emily then called Jordan's father. She told him that Jordan was having a mental breakdown and that she was sitting in her own waist and refusing to talk. Over the next 24 hours, these 3 watched Jordan repeatedly vomit, sweat profusely because she had a fever. At around 3 a.m. on December 29th, Jordan's organs completely shut down. She had lost all consciousness, and they still didn't call 911 for another 7.5 hours. The autopsy report showed that Jordan had 90 fresh injuries, and these injuries happened within the last 48 hours of her passing away. Outside of the 90, she had 20 older injuries. Some were healed, some were semi-healed. It also came out that she was beaten over a 12-month span with an electrical cord. All these POSs was arrested. Emily got charged with second-degree murder, Barbara got charged with second-degree manslaughter, and Alyssa got charged with first-degree unlawful imprisonment. And Emily's defense is that Jordan inflicted all those wounds on herself, that she was suffering from mental health, and she had did that all on her own. And Barbara's defense is she has dementia. That's her defense. Well, let me knock some memory into you then. The trial date has not been set yet. They did say it was close, but we still don't have a date yet. And we will be keeping a close eye on this case because I'm curious to see if somebody walks. What y'all think? It makes me sad when children don't get to experience being children. R.I.P. to Jordan Duncan. She did not deserve this.
There have been a lot of updates in the case of Nancy Ng, a woman who went missing during a yoga retreat to Guatemala last month, so let's talk about it. But be warned, these details will make your blood boil. If you need a full breakdown of the case, I posted an in-depth video about it last week, which you can go back and watch if you need to. The witness who was the last person to see Nancy alive has officially been publicly named. Her name is Christina Blasek, and she's a San Bernardino County public defender. Christina was on the same yoga retreat as Nancy, who disappeared on October 19th while kayaking on Lake Atitlan. It's now been 4 weeks since Nancy went missing, and Christina is only now speaking out for the first time through her attorney, Christopher Gardner. Nancy was last seen on video in her kayak on the lake, which was a little after 11 a.m. on the day she went missing. According to Christina, all 10 of the tourists went out with no safety training or life jackets, and once on the lake, they kind of all just went their separate ways. The water was reportedly becoming rough, so Christina started to head back to shore when she crossed paths with Nancy, who said she wanted to go swimming. According to Christina, she warned Nancy not to because the water was pretty rough and there was a good current, but Nancy reportedly jumped off her kayak anyway. Christina then says that she retrieved Nancy's kayak as it floated away, but she lost her grip. And after she got it for the second time, she turned around and Nancy was nowhere to be found. Christina then says that she immediately started screaming Nancy's name and screamed as much as she could, but she said that the water was pitch black and that she couldn't see anything, so she ultimately went back to shore for help. After she got to shore, she was greeted by the organizer of the retreat / yoga instructor, who has also since been publicly named. His name is Eddie Ramada, and according to both of them, once the distressed Christina got back to shore, he shielded her from onlookers and quickly rushed back to the hotel where all 10 of the tourists were staying. Christina allegedly told Guatemalan authorities what she saw, and they apparently told her that there was nothing that could be done and that Lake Atitlan is known for having people drown in it. This, of course, is everything that Christina told her attorney, who then released the statement. Nancy was then reported missing after hotel staff could not locate her. According to Lee Beal, the owner of the kayak rental company, the group was not scheduled to leave the next morning, but as we all know, within 12 hours of Nancy's disappearance, all 9 of the other tourists quickly checked out of the hotel without saying a word or talking to authorities, and they also did not pay for their excursion. But this is where things start to not really add up. After Nancy's family received a phone call from Eddie stating that she disappeared, they reached out to Christina, who again was the last person to see her alive, to see if she would talk to them and to help authorities locate Nancy. But Christina was silent. In fact, Nancy's family reached out to her multiple times, but she refused to say a word to them. Eddie reportedly told Nancy's family that Christina was too traumatized by the incident to speak with them. So they patiently waited for the police report, as that's all they could really do. And when they got it 5 days later, strangely enough, Christina's witness statement was nowhere in the official police report. There was actually not even one record of a single interview with Christina. Nancy's family and many others, including myself, are wondering why it took Christina so long to speak up and tell her side of what happened. Nancy's family has been begging her for information since the beginning, but for some reason it took her 4 weeks and getting an attorney to release any information. And according to the family, this is the first time that they're even hearing of this story. Nancy's family has since had to hire an independent search and rescue team called Black Wolf Helicopters, who have been the only ones to extensively search Lake Atitlan and the surrounding areas, as Guatemalan authorities called off the search after just 3 days. According to Chris Sharp of Black Wolf Helicopters, they've already searched roughly 95% of the lake and have also searched by land and air. However, since no one came forward and told authorities where Nancy even went into the lake, it's made finding her extremely hard and has severely hindered the investigation. According to Chris, Christina's statement about the water being pitch black is extremely valuable and would have been useful at the beginning of the investigation. They could have focused their search on the deepest part of the lake where the water is opaque, based on her description of the color change. But of course, this information only recently came to light 4 weeks later. Black Wolf Helicopters is hoping to bring in a sonar expert with this information to investigate deeper than 5 feet into the water. With the little information that witnesses are willing to give, time is of the essence to find Nancy. The fact that the only witness who last saw Nancy alive took 4 weeks to even just come forward is so bizarre to me. And it's just not fair to the family to have the only person who knows something just willingly not speak up when they need answers. I'd like to remind everyone of the GoFundMe in my bio for the family to help continue funding the search for Nancy. At this point, her family is questioning everything and they just want to bring Nancy home, as it's now been a month since she was last seen.
Sean Combs, aka Diddy, has been accused of more things that you would not believe. Let's dive into these allegations in girl language so that way it can actually make sense. That's why I'm a bit drunk right now. A lot about what I'll be speaking on is allegations. It hasn't been proven just yet. So since the beginning of Sean's career, he has been surrounded by deaths, parties, drugs, all of that since the beginning. Now, by the time he was 24, he got his own record label. A record label, there we go, and it was called Bad Boy Entertainment. This label blew up because of artists like Biggie from the East Coast, okay? Meanwhile, over at the West Coast, Death Row Records, home to Tupac and Snoop Dogg, they were also getting a lot of attention. Now, they eventually ended up becoming enemies. Now, on September 13th, 1996, 3 years later, Tupac was murdered. He was literally. And while it remains unsolved, there's a lot of rumors where Sean was involved. Less than a year later, in 1997, on March 9th, Biggie Smalls was also in LA, and he was one of Sean's closest friends. A lot of people are also making rumors that Sean was involved in that. Now, from 1994 to 2007, Sean was in an on and off relationship with Kim Porter. They had 4 kids together. And then in between 1999 and 2001, Sean dated Jennifer Lopez, aka J-Lo. So in 1999, J-Lo and Sean were in a New York City nightclub. A weapon had went off and it seriously injured a woman. They were both arrested, but J-Lo was in charge and Sean was acquitted, meaning that they couldn't find proof, not that they didn't do it, right? Woman that was injured, however, accused Sean of being responsible and later sued for $130 million in court. She won, by the way. Fast forward to 2006. Sean signs Cassandra Ventura, aka Cassie, to his record label. He had heard her first single and he absolutely fell in love. She was only 19. And he had a big ass age of 37. They had later started a romantic relationship that lasted until 2018. On November 16, 2023, Cassie had filed a 35-page lawsuit against Sean, accusing him of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. The lawsuit is available for you, but it is truly unbearable to even read. This man's a psycho. He's a psycho. It doesn't stop there, right? Cassie also details many horrifying claims, including accusations of Sean that he tried to have many artists murdered, aka Kid Cudi, that he blew up his car, and he forced her into multiple drug-fueled parties called freak-offs. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys know what freak-offs are. If you don't, that's totally okay. I'll explain what they are. Cassie was always disgusted by their age gap. I'm sure that she was forced into a relationship with Sean. She always wanted to leave, but the influence that he had on her and the fact that she was signed to his label, it made her feel trapped. Now, if anyone was to see Cassie's medical records, they would see how many drugs she was on and the beatings that she had. Sean made sure that her medical records were sent to him instead of her. He had kept her hidden away while she recovered from these injuries that he allegedly caused. But these allegations are literally just the beginning. Cassie also mentioned freak-offs. Sean would bring in other men and women, including minors, the youngest being 9 years old, and they would engage in sex acts where he watched and recorded these acts. Insane. Apparently Sean would have these minors lined up on a table, waiting to be picked up by these big name celebrities that you probably know of, and then literally be sexually assaulted. These events were orchestrated by Sean's employees. They helped facilitate these events. They would fly people in, book the hotel rooms, and even stock them up with supplies that you probably know, like baby oil and dildo. Cassie, along with many other victims, dealt with severe physical and mental abuse from these events. Now, I want you to imagine being so sexually and physically assaulted that you need an IV to recover. Are you kidding me? Let me add, it is alleged that Jay-Z and Beyonce are very much involved with Sean's crimes. Jay-Z and Sean are very close friends, and many doubt that it is impossible that they know nothing about what was going on behind the scenes. They still haven't spoken out about their own involvement, but seeing that Sean's list does say their name, I'm sure that the investigators will uncover everything that went on and the people that were truly involved. I really hope. Moving into the year 2015, Sean was in Cassie's condo in a hotel with a friend, right? Now, it was reported that Sean was so violent that he even dangled Cassie's friend over the 17th floor balcony But I don't know what, by her hand, by her throat. Regardless, that should not be done. Cassie was actually too sedated to react, but she did file this report later on. Now, the hotel surveillance was just leaked this year of Cassie running down the hall and Sean chasing her in a towel. So clearly there was an urgency of him chasing her. He tried paying $50,000 to the hotel to delete this footage. However, it was still leaked. I don't know how. Don't ask me how. I don't know. But I'm glad it was. So after all these years of abuse, she did end up filing, and it was settled within 1 day. There was no fight, no nothing. It was settled within 1 day. But that is not the end of it. So this did open up the door to a whole lot more accusations. So Sean's baby mama, Kim Porter, the mother of his kids, died at the age of 47 on November 15th, 2018, right? Apparently, she had pneumonia. A couple days prior of her death, she had a couple like flu-like symptoms, and she had passed away. But here's the sketchy part. Kim Porter had claimed multiple times that she wanted out of her and Sean's relationship. The only way she thought that she can get out was by blackmailing Sean by getting copies of his tapes and then threatening him if he does not leave. She even had a meeting with a producer, but then Sean found out about this meeting with a producer, and all of a sudden, this producer died of pneumonia. Did she die of pneumonia, or was it just a cover up to save Sean's ass? So Kim kept everything in a diary, right, of the things that she witnessed with Sean, including descriptions and copies of his sex records. But around the same time that she had plans to like out Sean on his secret society, that's when she suddenly died of pneumonia. Although she wasn't able to publish this book, Kim's friends actually sent her a diary to the publisher, along with the copies of the tapes that she had hidden. And now the book is out and is called Kim's Lost Words. Now, in the book, she states that some of these tapes had things that she would have never expected, like gay parties, freak-offs. But the young boys that she had found in these clips, like the 18-year-old pop icon in those tapes, was another level of disgust. It is alleged that this pop icon she is speaking of is Justin Bieber. Now, let's get into why his name is brought up with Sean Combs so often. So, Justin Bieber was introduced to Sean Combs by the age of like 15, 16, and because of his age and the fame that he had grown when entering the music industry, people would naturally try to influence and even exploit him. There's a video of Justin at a party with Sean, clearly heavily under the influence. Now, let me remind you of the lawsuits and allegations against Sean from several people, including Cassie and Kim Porter, claiming that he would intoxicate and drug these victims at the party and then perform vulnerable, inappropriate acts towards them. There's also another video where Sean asks Justin why he doesn't want to hang out with him anymore. Reminder, he's like 40 by this time, and Justin's like 15. Why are you asking a 15-year-old to hang out? And it's very clear in that video how uncomfortable Justin is and how nervous he was. One of the strongest speculations that Justin may be a victim stems from his music video Yummy. Many believe contain hidden messages about exploitation and what the music industry does to young, vulnerable children. So in the music video, Justin is seen around many powerful, wealthy individuals, seemingly enjoying his meal. On his plate, there's a loaf of bread portraying a cherry and 2 olives. Now, a cherry means a symbol of innocence, and olives means signs of peace. But they later become moldy and rotten throughout the video, which many are suggesting that it is a loss of peace and innocence in his childhood. As the dinner continues, Justin's enjoyment of the food starts fading as the dinner gets weirder and weirder. But despite that, the rich elites are still enjoying the food. The video also shows a band of young children. Now, it is believed that the young children are representing how children in the industry are used as entertainment and forced to overwork. And at the top of this already uncomfortable video, there is a play of young Justin with the word yummy, calling out pedophilia and child trafficking. So this video was such an emotional thing for Justin that he is actually seen crying, and he did need multiple breaks just to recoup. Unfortunately, the story does not end there. Just earlier this year, Homeland Security raided Sean's home, collecting a massive amount of data, like thousands of baby oils and things that I cannot say on TikTok. Then, on September 16th, 2024, Sean Combs was arrested, facing charges of fraudulent business schemes, conspiracy, and human trafficking. Now, let's look at the 14-page indictment that describes Sean's decades of alleged abuse with his criminal enterprise. The charges include forced labor, kidnapping, arson, and bribery to many young men and women. Even with all the charges, Sean's legal team still had the nerve to attempt to offer a $15 million bond, promising that he wouldn't flee. Prosecution did oppose, pointing out that many of his alleged crimes did take place in his own home, making house arrest completely pointless. As of now, Sean Combs remains with 2 denied bails, and the trial is still a long way off.